we've talked a lot and dissected a lot of the negatives that are going on. What is the biggest reason you think someone should be hopeful for the future?
I see I see an empire in decline. I see it everywhere. I see it every day. But I understand that I see it because my way of thinking about the world alerts me to all kinds of information that together give me this sense of a declining empire. And one of the features of a declining empire is that slowly but steadily, larger and larger portions of the population begin to understand that the empire is over. It takes a good long while because who wants to face that? That's frightening, that's depressing, that's worrisome, all of that. And so denial as a way of coping is what we would expect and what we typically define. And we find it. And let me give you a simple example. We just had a presidential election. We had three candidates, Trump, Biden, and Harris, and not a one of them ever said a single word about a declining empire. For them, clearly, this is not an issue. There is no empire that's declining that they are aware of or concerned about. So I have to recognize that what I see, others don't, and vice versa. But now let me show you that there are people who do understand it. I'm going to start particularly with the MAGA crowd, with Mr. Trump's political base. First of all, the very word, MAGA, make America great again. As some of Mr. Trump's detractors tried to say, well, does that mean you don't think America is great? No, 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 he said. But the problem is, he never gave up on the MAGA. He wears the same red hat now that he did in his earlier efforts. I think he understood, to his credit, that he was on to something, that there are huge numbers of Americans who believe that something is dying here. They don't want it to die. They believe it is a genuine or a former America that they want to bring back. That they, in fact, even though they wouldn't use these words, see a declining empire and want Mr. Trump to reverse the decline. He uses words like that all the time. Not empire, but reversing the decline. Now he puts it in a phrase we shouldn't be surprised at. He's whining all the time, Mr. Trump. The rest of the world has cheated us. The Europeans, the only reason they have a European Union is to screw us. I'm quoting him. You know, he sounds like a paranoid person who everybody's out to get me. Now, why would he do that? You know, it may be that that's how he actually sees it. I don't know. But I do know that it's politically very effective. It's a saying to the people he wants to vote for him, I recognize that we are in trouble. It's not our fault. It's other people who've cheated us, and it's our bad leaders who allowed us to be cheated. That's the Democrats and Biden. And I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to turn it around. You know what that is? That's an oblique, indirect, not very well informed recognition that something isn't right, that something has gone badly wrong. That is one way to get to the place I think we're going, which is a recognition that, like every other empire in the history of the human race, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Chinese Empire of the past, all of them arose, grew, peaked, and then declined. The American Empire replaced the greatest one before that, which was the British Empire. And we've had an empire now for about 100 years. And we are now peaking. We have peaked and we're going down. And the going down is a lot less fun than the flying up. And we're experiencing that. And it's a depressing, unhappy experience. It takes forms like this. I have a better job than my son is likely to get. My daughter has a better job than my wife ever aspired to get. What is going on? Well, I'm surrounded by people for whom the opposite is true. Their son and daughter have no chance to have the same standard of living. That's the reality for most Americans. What kinds of jobs have we lost in the last 40 years? Overwhelmingly manufacturing jobs, well paying, unionized jobs where a single individual, usually the father, could earn enough money to take care of his wife and children. That's not true anymore. You want to take care of children, you better be married or at least live together with someone and share the expense, because otherwise you can't do it. That's a decline in your standard of living. When I went to college, I did not have to take out humongous loans. But most Americans today would have to do that if they're going to go to college. So there are many, many ways in which your standard of living is being chipped away. That's one of the reasons people were so bitter during the inflation years of 2021 and 2022. Probably why Mr. Biden's popularity sank and why Kamala Harris, keeping close to Biden, was defeated. People don't have any slack. An inflation immediately hurts them at the grocery store or the department store or the gas pump. The reality is that the standard of living of the mass of Americans is declining. The reality is that the gap between rich and poor is bigger now than it has been at any time in the last half century of this country's history, which means the mass of people are falling further and further behind. The so-called American dream is now out of reach to the majority of Americans. What kind of dream is that? And it's frustrating people. And in their frustration, they are vulnerable. They may decide it's black people. That's an old one here in America. Or they might decide it's immigrants. Or they might decide it's those bad Chinese people. But you know something? None of that works. It doesn't make any difference. And then they're going to, sooner or later, begin to ask the question, gee, maybe those aren't the problems. And then people like me come and talk to them, and they say in numbers that I find gratifying, gee, maybe you have a point. And my explanations to them will say things like the following. You're upset that the goods from China were made by Chinese workers, as indeed they were, over there in China, as they were, And they're coming here, and there are no jobs for you here in America because all that stuff, all the clothes we wear, the appliances we use, and so forth, are coming from China or other such countries. And I say, yes, but let me explain to you what you know, but you're not thinking clearly. How did the goods stop being produced in Chicago or Detroit or Pittsburgh and move to China? Did the Chinese do that? No, they didn't have the power to do that. Those were American companies hiring American workers to produce all that stuff here in America. Those corporations decided to shut down and move production to China, just like those corporate boards of directors decided to use computers or decided later to substitute robots for living people. And you know why they did all those things? To make more money, to make more profits, because that's what they're in business to do. You're not angry at the Chinese who got the job. You're angry at the corporate leader who made the decision to offer that job to the Chinese worker, and you know it. It's a cheap shot to be angry at the Chinese worker because he comes into the story at the end of the process. You know where it starts? You know where the decision is made? With the corporate leaders of America. And you're too frightened or scared or worried to put the finger of blame where it belongs. So you put it instead on the poorest immigrants from Central America who have barely got the shirt on their back. What are you doing? Their decisions didn't move your job. We have 330 million Americans. We have 10 to 11 undocumented immigrants. There is no way on God's green earth that 10 to 11 of the poorest people on this planet, those immigrants, could cause 330 million Americans, one of the richest countries in the world, to stumble as badly as it has. So kind of wake up, Jack. Your concern is with a system that makes it profitable and therefore rational, reasonable to move production out of the United States and into other parts of the world and not worry that the extra profits they make from doing that means a lifetime for you and your family that becomes more difficult each day. When I finish with such explanations, I can see in their eyes, no matter what they say to me, that they have now a new and different way of understanding what's happening to them. And that gives me a lot of hope.